Media and royal commentators frame this as a major reputational crisis for the monarchy.
He has no right to be here. That was Prince Edward's immediate, cold, and uncompromising reaction upon discovering an entirely unexpected face appearing at the most important, sacred ceremony of his life. In early June 2026, London was enveloped in the light mist characteristic of an English summer, creating an atmosphere that felt taut like a stretched string as the new reign gradually took shape. Prince Edward was preparing to receive his new, monumental title, Royal Steward of the Kingdom, a position universally seen as the future right-hand man to Prince William when he finally ascends the throne. Everything in that historic hall was supposed to go perfectly, seamlessly, and without a single flaw. Yet, just minutes before the ceremony began, all eyes suddenly turned to Tom Parker Bowles, the son of Queen Camilla, who wasn't even on the original, meticulously checked guest list. Even more strangely and suspiciously, Tom's seat was changed at the very last minute, moving him directly to a place of honor right in front of the flashing media cameras. When the first official photos appeared in the press, it seemed as though all attention was focused entirely on Tom, as if it were his own ceremony, his own moment of triumph. Was this merely an astonishing, unpredictable coincidence, or had someone quietly, masterfully orchestrated everything behind the heavy palace doors? Prince William was about to ascend the throne, and the royal family desperately needed solid, unwavering pillars to maintain absolute stability during this transition. In that crucial context, the ceremony conferring the title on Prince Edward became the most important internal event at the moment. Edward, the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II, officially received the title Royal Steward of the Kingdom, which represented the highest level advisory position, the one who would stand firmly beside William and support him in every crucial, historic decision of the upcoming reign. For decades, Edward had always been the absolute model of quiet loyalty, never chasing the spotlight like some other disruptive family members. He proved his worth through quiet actions, discreet official tours, sustained charitable projects, and especially his absolute support for the monarchy. The new title was not only a personal honor, but also undeniable proof of his unwavering loyalty to the Windsor bloodline. Edward fully understood the heavy responsibility he had, once saying in a private conversation with William, "We must uphold history. That is our true mission." That morning, Edward stepped out of the car with a dignified demeanor, his perfectly tailored dark suit catching the light, with the royal emblem gleaming brilliantly on his chest. He took a deep breath, clearly feeling his heartbeat stronger than usual because this was supposed to be the most memorable moment of his life, the pinnacle of his service to the royal family. He smiled faintly as officials greeted him, but inside he was filled with pride, mixed with anxiety for the future. Westminster Hall today was decorated solemnly, but not ostentatiously, where warm golden lights shone down on the rows of honored seats reserved only for key figures of the royal family and government. Edward entered with straight shoulders and steady, calculated steps, nodding to familiar faces, longtime advisors, and senior royal family members who had supported him for years. Everything seemed absolutely perfect, but then, as his gaze swept across the front row, he froze for a chilling moment. Right in the most prominent position, right next to the central area, sat Tom Parker Bowles, the son of Queen Camilla. Tom was there in a smart gray suit, his face completely calm, as if he belonged there long ago. Despite having no uniform, no royal insignia, just an ordinary food critic standing amid a sea of powerful people. Edward felt an electric jolt run down his spine, his heart pounding with a mixture of shock and anger. He has no right to be here. The thought rang clearly in his mind, carrying both surprise and suppressed anger that he had to control in front of the public. Tom was not on the official guest list, and Edward knew that very well, because he had personally reviewed the organization's files multiple times before the event. His appearance was completely unexpected, raising dark questions about why Camilla's son was sitting in such a place of honor. This was an internal ceremony honoring Edward's new role and reinforcing William's position, It was absolutely not a stage for anyone else to assert external influence. Edward clenched his fists inside his pockets, trying to maintain a calm, unbothered expression before the crowd. He did not want personal emotions to ruin this sacred, historic moment, but unease had already crept deep into his heart, refusing to leave. He continued toward the dais to receive the title, standing before the microphone, where Edward's voice still rang out firmly and authoritatively, stating, "I accept this title with all responsibility and loyalty to the kingdom and the royal family." Thunderous applause echoed throughout the hall, but as Edward looked down at the seats, his eyes inadvertently met Tom's once more. Tom was smiling, nodding lightly as if sharing in the glory, which made the discomfort in Edward grow heavier and more intense. He wondered if this was just a random incident or a calculated signal of shifting powers. The ceremony proceeded smoothly on the surface. Edward shook hands with officials and received warm congratulations from everyone. But throughout it all, his mind was in absolute turmoil. He worried deeply about the royal family's image, because William needed unity, not questions about bloodlines and external influence from the Parker Bowles family. Edward clearly felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders as a brother and the upcoming Royal Steward, knowing he could not let small cracks become major fissures. When the ceremony finally ended and people began to leave, Edward lingered for a while, watching Tom Parker Bowles' figure blend into the crowd. The smile on Tom's lips remained, but in Edward's heart was a silent, unbreakable determination to uncover the truth. Today's untimely appearance not only spoiled his moment of glory, but also stirred deeper suspicions that something was fundamentally wrong. Edward knew he could not remain silent, for the suspicious signs were only just beginning to surface, and the battle for the future of the monarchy had quietly begun. Going back to exactly 2 days before the monumental title conferral ceremony took place, in a highly discreet, heavily guarded private house located on the quiet outskirts of London, the atmosphere became incredibly heavy, tense, and thick with unspoken ambition. Queen Camilla sat gracefully at the polished tea table in a cozy, dimly lit living room that was carefully shielded from any curious eyes or prying paparazzi. Her face perfectly retained its familiar professional royal calm, but her eyes, if one looked closely enough, revealed a deep, burning anxiety about what the future held for her biological family. Facing her directly across the table was Tom Parker Bowles, her eldest son, a middle-aged man with a very neat appearance, sharp gaze, and an underlying awareness of his precarious position. Camilla slowly set down her porcelain teacup, her voice dropping to a low, emotional whisper as she looked at her son. "Tom, your mother doesn't want to have to resort to these measures, but William and Edward, they have never truly accepted us into the inner circle. If we don't act now, if we don't show our presence, we might be completely pushed to the dark sidelines the exact moment William ascends the throne." Tom looked back at his mother, his face a complex mix of anxiety, hesitation, and a hidden, long-suppressed ambition. He gently squeezed her hand to comfort her, his voice warm but filled with a sudden determination. "Mother, I understand completely. I don't want to cause major trouble or spark an open scandal. But if I appear there at that ceremony, at least the public and the court will see that our family still has a rightful place. We cannot just sit here quietly and wait to be forgotten by history." The secret conversation lasted for nearly an hour, during which Camilla passionately expressed her deepest anxieties about the rapidly approaching future of the monarchy. She feared that after King Charles passed away, William's upcoming reign would bring drastic, unforgiving structural changes that would isolate her children. Edward, with his absolute, unwavering loyalty to strict Windsor tradition, was always the prominent one advocating for a clear, unbreakable distance from her private, non-royal family members. "They respect mother in name only, out of duty to your father, but in their hearts, it is entirely different," Camilla said, her voice slightly trembling with a mixture of resentment and maternal protectiveness. She did not want an open conflict that would ruin her hard-earned reputation, but she also could not let her own children be completely excluded from the inner circle of power. Tom nodded in absolute agreement, because he clearly understood his own precarious, fragile position within the Grand Palace. Though he was the biological son of the Queen Consort, he remained, by law and by blood, an absolute outsider to the official royal family. His daily life revolved around food criticism, writing books, and private commercial activities, not the rigid, sacred court rituals of the Windsors. But precisely because of that heavy exclusion, he recognized the immense psychological value of asserting his physical presence at Edward's ceremony. If I sit in a place of honor, even just once on a global stage, it will send a clear message that our family still matters, Tom said firmly. Right after that secret meeting ended, everything behind the scenes began changing discreetly through a network of loyal staff. Tom Parker Bowles's name suddenly appeared on the reserved guest list, a list that previously had absolutely no mention of him whatsoever. No one among the lower staff knew exactly where the high-level directive came from, but the senior organizers implicitly understood it was an urgent request from Camilla's private office. They carried it out quietly in the shadows, leaving no clear paper traces or digital footprints that could be easily traced back to the Queen. By the morning of the ceremony, the meticulous adjustments continued without stopping, and Tom's seating position was gradually, strategically moved up to the honored seats. Those specific positions were strictly reserved for core royal figures, making each change a highly unusual and dangerous move that violated protocol. Each modification was made in total silence through short, hush phone calls and handwritten notes delivered by hand. Camilla did not personally sign any official documents, but her immense influence was strong enough for everything to proceed smoothly without initial resistance. She desperately hoped that through Tom's prominent presence, the public and the royal family would see clearly that her line was not easily sidelined. Meanwhile, in another corner of London, Prince Edward was busy with the final, exhausting preparations for his big ceremony, completely unaware of this secret meeting. He knew absolutely nothing of this calculated plan, only feeling a vague, passing unease when reviewing the official files one last time before stepping out. But everything still seemed under control, or at least he thought so, until he walked into the hall and saw the shocking reality. After ending that tense conversation with her son 2 days prior, Camilla had stood completely alone by the large window, looking out at the lush garden. Her heart was in absolute turmoil, torn between her love for her children and the clear knowledge that this action could spark larger, permanent rifts. Just this once, she told herself, trying to reassure her conscience. But deep down, she knew that Edward, with his resolute, uncompromising nature, would not let things slide. That secret conversation laid the heavy foundation for a day full of royal surprises, setting up a confrontation that was absolutely unavoidable. That very evening, as a heavy, cold night fell over Clarence House, Prince Edward could wait no longer because the burning unease from the morning ceremony still smoldered deeply in his heart. He sat silently in the back of his car, looking out at the hazy, rain-slicked streetlights of London, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned completely white. I must clarify this hidden agenda tonight, he thought to himself with a fierce sense of duty, knowing that as the newly appointed Royal Steward of the kingdom, he could not let toxic doubts affect the stability of the crown. William was about to ascend the throne, and Edward clearly felt the massive responsibility of protecting that fragile transition weighing heavily on his shoulders. He entered Clarence House with a determined, unyielding demeanor, completely unannounced and bypassing standard palace pleasantries. Queen Camilla received him in a private sitting room where soft, warm golden lights illuminated priceless antique paintings, maintaining her familiar, elegant composure. But Edward immediately noticed a deep weariness in her eyes. Without any preamble, Edward went straight to the point, standing tall as his voice cut through the silent room, low but sharp as a steel blade. Camilla, I am not here for casual pleasantries tonight. Why was Tom present at today's private ceremony? His seat was changed at the absolute last minute from a reserved slot to the honored row, and the media seemed perfectly prepared to focus on him. This was my day to honor my lifelong service, not an opportunistic stage for someone else to assert external influence. Camilla sat down lightly, her fingers stroking her pearl necklace as she tried to keep her voice calm and unbothered. Edward, I understand you're deeply upset, but I did not personally intervene in the guest list or the seating chart. The event organizers handled everything, and Tom was just an ordinary guest who harmed absolutely no one. Edward did not sit down, instead pacing a few tight steps as intense emotions surged within him, the suppressed anger from the morning now threatening to erupt, though he forced his voice to remain composed. An ordinary guest? Tom has never had an official, constitutional role in the royal family. He is your biological son, and while I respect that, the boundaries must remain crystal clear. William needs a strong, unquestioned reign, not public questions about bloodlines and court infiltration. I have tried my best to accept you for my father's sake, for overall family harmony, but do not turn an important state ceremony into a publicity stage for your private family. Camilla looked straight into Edward's eyes, her voice remaining gentle but hardening with a resolute undertone. I only want everything to go smoothly for everyone. Tom's appearance was not to compete for glory with you. He is my son, and I have every right to look out for my children's future. So please do not make things worse, Edward. The atmosphere in the room grew completely stifling, and Edward clearly sensed the ancient tension rising between them, realizing he was facing a cleverly built wall of denial. He did not hate Camilla personally, but he was profoundly disappointed by actions he saw as a dangerous overstepping of royal protocol. He took a deep breath, restraining his temper one last time. I do not want an internal war, but if these unauthorized changes continue, they will completely undermine public trust and internal confidence. Our royal family has been through too many scandals. Do not let history repeat itself. The sharp confrontation lasted longer than expected, with Camilla continuing to deny direct involvement while emphasizing her maternal right. When the conversation finally ended and Edward prepared to leave, he turned around one last time, and his gaze inadvertently swept across Camilla's desk. There, under the glowing desk lamp, lay a clearly printed official seating chart, and next to the bolded name of Tom Parker Bowles, there were handwritten notes in Camilla's distinct handwriting, with sharp arrows pointing to the honored position accompanied by the short phrase, priority. Edward froze, his heart pounding in his chest, but he said nothing more, only giving Camilla a long, meaningful look before walking out into the night. On his way back to the palace, Edward immediately called his closest advisor, his voice low but resolute. Prepare the internal files. We need to monitor these administrative offices much more closely from now on. In the days following the incident, the internal rumors spread quietly among the staff, and some organizers secretly confirmed to Edward that the directive had indeed come directly from Camilla's office. However, Camilla chose absolute, unbreakable silence, offering no public explanation, using that silence as a protective shell to maintain her position. But the biggest surprise came from the public because the story about Tom was quickly forgotten amid London's chaotic news cycle, and instead, all eyes turned to Prince Edward. His firm, authoritative speech at the ceremony, full of devotion and a clear vision for a stable reign, became the central focus of major headlines, which unanimously praised him, stating, Prince Edward affirms his key role in the future of the monarchy. Edward clearly felt that massive shift, using the opportunity to send a strong message of unity. In a private meeting with William afterward, Edward said with deep emotion, "We must maintain the boundaries. Those not part of the official royal family should not advance further. This is how we protect what our parents built." William looked at his younger brother, nodding in deep trust, and in that definitive moment, the title of Royal Steward became a true symbol of steadfast loyalty. Edward began participating much more deeply in strategic palace decisions, turning the challenge into a total victory for the Windsor bloodline, while Camilla and Tom quietly retreated to their proper positions, proving that in the calculating world of the court, loyalty and perseverance will always prevail.